What's up, people? I'm one of your hosts, Phoenix.
And I am your other host, Titan.
And welcome to NTAT, and this is our Redfall review in progress. Redfall has been a very controversial release so far.
To say the least.
With all the technical issues and the negative reviews.
A lot of the technical problems on PC with frame rate drops and stuff like that. People saying that items are spawning in as they're looking at them. Problems like that are what causing people to talk negative about it.
Definitely. So we want to give a controversial take of our own. This game isn't as bad as they're saying it is.
It's true.
So what we want to do now is we kind of want to get in and give you the pros and cons of the game, but we want to do it in a different way. All the reviews that we've seen have all been in single player.
Yes.
We actually played this game in multiplayer.
And it changed the game for us.
100%. And also, I played on the Xbox Series X and you played on PC.
Yep.
And I played as a host. And so everything that you hear from this moment forward is going to be based off of those experiences. All right, so we're going to start with the pros. So let's start with music and sounds.
I think that the music in this game sets it apart from a lot of other games. You know, one of the things that I love about the music is that you always know when there's an enemy around. And so when I'm exploring buildings and looting, I always get like a sense of like unfeeling, like I get like a nervous feeling, and I'm like, why is that? And then I'm like, oh, it's the music. I'm like, that means there's something around. And that's when I always go around looking for it and always find it. And that's what you notice. You're always like, why are you finding them first?
Yeah, every time we play, you always find the enemies long before I do. Yeah. And I'm like, where's everybody at?
Yep.
But yeah, the music, the sounds of the game itself are really good. They have impact to them. And of course, one of my favorite is whenever you level up or you complete a mission. All right, so our next is a pro if you're Titan and a con if you're Phoenix. And this one is blowing up Phoenix. This is something that Titan's been doing since the game started.
What was that?
So this is just a couple of examples of him blowing me up.
Okay, to be fair though, here's some clips of him blowing me up.
But that's only been just a few, so.
It still counts.
Another pro is going to be the level up trust system. This is a mechanic that's in the game that has you leveling up as you participate with your partners by simply playing close to the character, reviving them, and covering them during battle. Now, there is the other side to this, and Titan will talk about this a little bit later on.
So our next pro is going to be the art style. While it is very unrealistic, it is very grounded, and I love it. The cutscenes are a little bit off, for me at least, but it's still a very beautiful style. Between the vampires and how they move around and how everything looks, the horror, the daylight cycle, everything about the art style that they implemented, while it's not unique, it is very good.
Another pro is going to be the co-op, and this is where Redfall actually shines. A lot of the reviews that we've seen, a lot of people who've talked about have played in single player mode.
Yeah.
But this game was actually built to play in multiplayer.
Now,
we'll get into that a little deeper a little bit later, but this is where it shines. Each character plays very well together.
Remy's character has a healing aurora, and in the heat of battle, it's so easy to pop it down and be able to catch your breath for a second. While it doesn't last very long, it's still good to be able to reload your weapons and to get a full bar of health in like a moment's notice. It really fits perfect in the co-op setting.
It does, and Layla has the umbrella that will block a lot of the incoming damage from gunfire, which allows you to shoot from behind it. And then once I've taken enough damage, I can release it into kind of a shockwave. And these things are great for co-op. Also, we have the healing system itself where I can put in specs into my character where when I revive Titan, he can get up a lot quicker with a lot more health. Layla's other ability creates a phantom elevator that makes for great co-op fun.
Oof, brutal.
So the next pro for me is going to be the loot and the salvage system. I love this because when you're looting, you can also salvage something that you don't want right there in the loot box or the crate. This saves so much time and effort and inventory spaces. It keeps things from being cluttered, and I mean, you run into so much stuff that you don't use, and it's so good to be able to salvage it right there in the loot box.
Agreed. And as far as the loot itself, it's the regular cookie cutter, tier list type loot. But the loot itself is actually pretty interesting, especially when you get to the vampire killing weapons like your favorite,
the UV beam.
And my favorite, or one of my favorites, the stake launcher. And there's also a flare gun that sets the vampires on fire, and there's a lot of other fun that you can have with it. But the loot is very fun when it comes to these unique weapons.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you also have your normal shotguns and sniper rifles and auto rifles, which perform like most games do, so they're fine. But the other ones, they really kick it up a notch in this game.
One of the things I love is I always have a different selection of weapons in my inventory at all times. So depending on the fight, I can always switch to a different weapon when I need to. And even in the heat of battle, in the middle of a fight, if you're just running out of ammo or you need something else, you can just switch right there, and it saves so much time.
All right, so our next pro is actually the skill tree. Now, this isn't a really deep RPG where you level up 100,000 times. This is more in kin of like Borderlands.
Yeah.
But I did find that the skill tree has been fun. The next pro for me is going to be actually the cutscenes. Now I know Titan doesn't like them as much as I do, but let me give you a little insight into it. One, most cutscenes, especially when you're talking about shooters, co-op shooters, they go into these long drawn out sequences, which if it was single player would be amazing. But most of the time you just want to jump back into the action. These scenes are really quickly, they give you the gist of what's going on, and they do it in a stylized way where it's a slow or a still pick and then the voiceover.
One of the things that differ for me is everything that Phoenix said was a great point, but for me, I'm not a cutscene person. I love stories in games, but a lot of times they can feel daunting and, like he said, long and drawn out. This is short, sweet, to the point, but I wish they would have put a little bit more time and effort into it to make it a little bit smoother for me. But that's a personal thing. All right, so a pro for me is I love horror, and the first vampire encounter was set up perfectly. So what really made this is the shadow on the wall, the noise. You wasn't really sure what to expect, or at least I wasn't. And it was very exciting for me. I was like, oh, what is this gonna be? How is this fight gonna go? I wasn't really sure what to expect out of it. And just how the scene was set up was just astonishing for me. Another thing that I love about the vampires is the diversity and the different types of vampires that there are. So the Shroud, the first encounter with the Shroud, I wasn't sure what it was, and so I was like, oh, let me take a shot, and then I shot it, and then boom, everything just around us went black.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I remember everything going black. I'm looking around, I'm like, dude, where is he? I can't find, I remember shooting a canister by the tree that exploded and he popped up burning. And then I thought you had some trick because you kept finding the Shroud and I'm just waving around everywhere like, where is this thing?
Yeah, it was really hard to find.
But yeah, the vampire encounters I think are the strength. Whenever you fight a vampire, it's going to be a chaotic battle. It's a lot of fun trying to switch up your weapons, especially when they start to overrun you and you're dealing with more than 2 or 3. So one of my final pros is actually going to be how money works. Instead of it being, some type of paper currency or coins, it's actually through resources. So like toilet paper and baby dolls and matches. And this makes sense because this is something that we've seen a billion times in post-apocalyptic worlds, both in video games and in TV shows. All right, so we're gonna move on into our cons section.
Okay.
There are things about this game that aren't great. And I wanna start with the mission structure. Missions are very cliche. It's just a reason for you to get out and shoot more vampires. Starting with one of the first missions that we realized, hey, we're about to go down this rabbit hole, which was a mission that told us that we needed to take a pocket watch and put it on a grave. Now, normally that would have been like, okay, side mission, but this was a main mission and also in the middle of everybody dying.
Yeah. And I think we even had a comment at that moment, like, is this really what we're going to be doing?
Right. Yeah. So the mission structure is very rudimentary. So that's something that you're going to see. It's not groundbreaking. And I really wish they had spent some time upping the ante on this because The structure around this game, the bones of it, are fantastic. There's something there. There's something special that's there. But with things like this, it doesn't quite get there.
So a con for me is the lockpicks and hack wires. 3 of each is just not enough. And with Jacob's character, you can add, there is a perk that increases the amount of lockpicks, but this is a character specific trait. This is not with all characters. And this in solo is it's devastating. It's not enough. In co-op, it's a little bit better because you have 6 total, and depending on what characters, you can have more. But really, it's not enough.
And for reference, we're about 10 hours into the game so far, and so maybe this changes a little bit later on, but at the moment, we've noticed that this has been an issue.
Yeah. So personally, this is not a con for me, but it is something that I noticed that could be an issue for other people, is the open world. It is very plain in some instances, and there is a lot of like openness that there's nothing going on. There's no enemies, there's no buildings to loot. It's just kind of open forest and climb a rock. And to me, this is not a problem, but to other people, I can see this being very daunting. And this again goes back to solo versus co-op, is that in co-op, you know, you have your friends with you, always having a conversation. It spices things up a little bit. For some people, this might be a little bit of a game changer for them.
I agree, because when you look at co-op, you can kind of fill in that white space, right? With, as you said, conversations, laughing and joking, so on and so forth. And this kind of reinforces what we talked about, this being more of a co-op game than it is a single player game. One of my cons actually plays off of one of my pros, and that is the trust system.
Okay.
And the reason being is because the trust system actually does more than one thing. Part of it gives you some type of in-game bonus, and it also allows for the characters to start to trust each other and have more conversations.
These jerks hoarding food and supplies. Gotta realize they're not gonna make it on their own, right?
Oh, sounds personal.
Damn right. Back home, we got hit by hurricanes and earthquakes. Only way to get through it is by taking care of each other.
The problem is we have no clue what the in-game combat bonuses are. The game doesn't tell you what it is. The description doesn't tell you what it is. And I've scoured the internet, and thus far I've really not seen anybody who definitively knows what this system's for. And I've always hated games that just gave you kind of a random, like, this does something here, is very vague. As much as I love Elden Ring, that one had a large issue with that with items when it first came out.
Oh, yeah.
You collect a ton of items, had no clue what it does. And yes, sure, I guess you could experiment as much as you want or wait months down the line for someone to figure it out, but it's annoying when you first start. Another one of my cons is the fact that this game is not a single player game. This game is built from the ground up as a multiplayer game. Kind of in the same vein as a MMORPG or live service game. Yes, you can play it single player, and a lot of people did for their reviews, but I think also that's why you got a lot of these really overblown statements of how this is the absolute worst game in history, is the worst AAA game they've ever played, and that's just not true. There's a lot of fun to be had with this game, but you have to play in multiplayer. You have to play with a partner. Also, I think a lot of people played on PC, which has been the worst port. And that's the fault of the game, the fault of the developers. But either way, it takes away from the game itself. You should be able to play this game in single player because the developer said you could. And they should have had mechanics in place to assist with that. But instead, as you play, you kind of feel where there's an issue when you're playing by yourself or things that you're actually missing.
So for me, solo versus co-op has been a little bit different. Solo seems a lot harder for me. I don't know if the amount of enemies has changed, but it seems like the spawning is a lot different. I feel like groups of enemies spawn a lot quicker than in co-op. So it's like I'm constantly in battles that I wasn't in previously, and it adds a bit of a challenge because a lot of times you can get overran very fast. And in co-op, you don't really have that issue because you always have someone else helping you, and it divides the enemies up in a way that is suitable to not get overrun.
So far, as we mentioned before, we're about 10 hours in. So this is just kind of our first part or part one of our review in progress. But what we've discovered is that, yes, the game is atypical, right? But the bones are there. The bones are there. It has something about it that's a lot of fun when you're playing in co-op, and I really enjoyed the game thus far.
So far, I mean, I have no complaints of the game. I've had a few issues here and there, but as of what the comments have said, I haven't had any of the major issues that people are just bashing on the game. The game is overall a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And that's kind of the point, right? No, this is not going to be your gigantic AAA blockbuster. It's not Elden Ring, that's for sure. It's not game changing. A lot of what you see are tropes that we've seen 500 million times again. But again, this game is fun. It's fun in itself. Now, I can understand if you're playing single player and you're playing on PC and you're experiencing a lot of technical issues. So far, 10 hours in, the only technical issues we've had are a couple of frame drops from you. That was on day 1 and day 3. And some funny animations after fast traveling. But other than that, it's been smooth running. Also, I want to make note that the 30 frames per second is almost unnoticeable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. I actually, it didn't change the gameplay for me. And I don't know if that's because I'm an OG gamer. I don't know if that's the reason, so it doesn't bother me as much. But I didn't have any issues. I don't have any problems, and I definitely don't have any glitches so far.
I do have one slight little funny glitch. Is as I walked into a building, I noticed that there was vampires in 3 different rooms, but they weren't actually there. I couldn't touch them. I couldn't interact with them. They weren't really there, and it was really funny. But in that same room, I was able to walk from one side of the building to the other. And vampires, the actual enemies, would just keep respawning. So for about a 20-minute period, I stayed in one area just fighting vampires until I just ran out of ammo.
And the funny part about this story is that was in single mode.
Yep.
That was in single mode. We have had no glitches like that as we've played together. And I don't know if that's going to be the same way for everybody else. And again, we're doing a unique playthrough as you're playing on PC and I'm playing on the Xbox, but we haven't had those issues. Also, I want to have a conversation, just a small one, with us as gamers. And I want to talk about Arkane Studios. If you're unfamiliar with Arkane Studios, they're responsible for the Prey and Dishonored series. Both were critically acclaimed, but neither made a lot of money. Dishonored especially is one of my favorite series. Unique visual style, a great story, engaging combat, branching paths to complete your objects. Powers that allowed you to go into rats, listen to conversations, gain important information. It allowed you to turn into a shadow and sneak up on your enemies or teleport to rooftops. Your choices mattered in this game, and it showed up in how the world evolved and especially how the ending or what ending you got. But there's a couple of funny things about this, and Dishonored came out in 2012. But I want to tell you about some of the games that were bestsellers for 2012. Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Madden and FIFA 12, Halo 4, and Borderlands. In 2016, there was a sequel, Dishonored 2. Here's some of the top games for that year. Call of Duty Infinite, Battlefield, The Division, Overwatch, Madden and FIFA 17. You're starting to see a pattern here. As gamers, we say we want something new, we want something innovative. But what we didn't do is vote with our wallets. What we told Arkane Studios is, listen, we love your games. They're great, and they're actually fantastic, but they're not worth us buying. What we really want is shooters. What we really want are live service. What we really want are loot boxes. This is what we told them. So the last 2 games, Deathloop and now Redfall, have had all these same tropes in the game. So all I'm saying is gamers, if we really want something new, we really want something innovative, what we need to do is actually vote with our wallets. When something new, inventive, and fun comes out, we have to support it. Because if not, what we're telling the developers are, this isn't the route we want to go.
All right, folks, that wraps up our video for today. So don't forget to join us every Friday morning. We'll be there, you be there.